just the highlights. This is the Bite-Sized Business Breakfast.
Let's talk travel, transport and flight this morning because it is 8 a.m, the first day today, and we are having a look at the numbers that have come out from flyDubai. Passengers more than doubling in Q1 of this year. We're very pleased to be joined now on Microsoft Teams from, I think, Malawi by the aviation expert Sean Mendes. Sean, it's lovely to speak to you. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you all today?
I'm good. Let's look at what we've seen coming out of flyDubai, up more than 110%, the number of passengers that they carried in Q1. What do you take from those numbers?
Well, I think that, basing anything on a Q1 of 2021 benchmark, it was inevitable that they would come up well ahead. However, I think that there's a number of reasons why it's actually so far ahead and why it's such a huge jump. And I think the first reason is certainly there was a bit of luck with it, but there was also a lot of very good planning involved. The Middle East began reopening from the COVID shutdowns probably around 9 to 12 months ahead of the rest of the developed world. So, but by the time you wound up with Europe and North America all opening up to travelers, airlines like flyDubai, like Emirates, were already geared up to take advantage of these markets. So it was very much a case of right place at right time, but it was their enlightened actions, probably during the middle of 2021, that put them in that situation.
One of the
Another important point for them was the 737 MAX. That aircraft was meant to be the backbone of flyDubai's fleet and had been grounded since 2019 following safety incidents. So those aircraft were ungrounded again, and that allowed flyDubai again to put in expansion if necessary, and much more fuel-efficient aircraft, which gave them better margins. And finally, in Q1 of this year, you had the sanctions on Russia and the suspension of flights by European carriers, which increased the demand on routes in that region where otherwise passengers might have been flying on European carriers. So I think it's a perfect storm, and they were in the right place at the right time to take advantage of it.
Oh, you've mentioned a couple of things in there, Sean, that deserve further investigation. One of those, when you talk about capacity and being able to use those planes again, what challenges are the lower cost carriers facing when it comes to getting planes back in the air, whether that's rehiring pilots, getting, flying hours up? How tricky is it at the moment?
Oh, definitely. I mean, ramping up operations, even if it is restoring operations, requires a lot of operational coordination. And as you mentioned, that involves, pilots. A pilot may have been sitting at home for 8 to 12 months, and, he needs his retraining, he needs his security clearances back and things like that. In the case of the 737 MAX, which had been parked for over 2 years, these aircraft need full checks. And all of this cannot be done overnight. So this is where the whole lead time comes into it. When you're able to start work on these things a few months before the rest of the world, when things are ready to move, you're able to take advantage of the opportunity at the correct time when it comes up.
You mentioned the fuel efficiency of those 737 MAX aircraft there. Fuel prices are rising. We're talking about 112 this morning, but we've had oil experts tell us that we could be at 150 by the summer. How do carriers like flyDubai cope with that?
Well, I think flyDubai is fortunate because, being based in the Middle East, the access to supply at least is there. They've also got the advantage of being in an oil-rich state such as the UAE. So the refinery capacity, the crude production capacity, and so forth isn't as bad as it is in certain other far-flung parts of the world. There are many countries in Africa and in Asia right now which are actually struggling to get supply because so much of capacity has been withdrawn from the market due to the ban on the Russian exports. So certainly it is going to affect their bottom line as prices go up, but they definitely are assured of some sort of supply because of the local production capacity and local refinery capacity that they have access to.
What does all that mean for ticket prices around the world?
Oh, ticket prices are inevitably going to go up, unfortunately. Oil prices are 30 to 40% of an airline's operating costs. And if these oil prices go up by, what we've seen, almost 30 to 40% now over the last 3 months, you're going to see 10 to 15% in terms of the cost of transporting each passenger. And I think airlines are not going to really have much choice but to pass that along to the consumer, whether that's going to be in terms of fuel surcharges in the short term or rises in price or anything similar.
One of the interesting things that came out of the flyDubai numbers for me was the fact that we have seen through traffic, we've seen people who aren't necessarily using flyDubai to come in or out of Dubai, but to get somewhere else almost double. It's up from, I think, about 28% of passengers to about 42. Not so great for the Dubai hotels, but how is that good for the network?
Oh, it's extremely good. And it was something which was pretty inevitable because just before the pandemic, you saw flyDubai and Emirates come together with a lot closer cooperation. And, this is a result of that. A lot of the smaller routes, which Emirates was unable to serve with their fleet of big A380s and 777s, were now servable by flyDubai. And with the code share, with some flyDubai flights operating from Terminal 3, it was inevitable that there would be an increase in the number of connecting passengers. And also, flyDubai's own network has increased its footprint in Eastern Europe since before the pandemic. And that creates greater potential for connecting passengers from flyDubai flights to other flyDubai flights, leave alone Emirates, to their wider Asian and African network. So I think it's just, it's an important step in the maturing of flyDubai to becoming more than just a little point-to-point low-cost carrier, which is what it started off as. And it's now becoming a lower-cost network carrier in its own right.
Very quickly, 30 seconds before we let you go, we're talking about the war for talent this morning and compensation. What are airlines having to offer to get pilots and to get crew back? Are we seeing those wages and benefits rise in airlines around the world?
Definitely. I think airlines have seen that, unfortunately, way too many valued employees left the industry during the pandemic, and as a result, getting them back into the cockpits and getting them back as engineers and so forth is tricky. You see airlines in the US offering huge signing bonuses, $40,000 to $60,000. They're having to import pilots from Australia, which is still a lot slower with their recovery on 2 to 3 year contracts and special visas. So this is a global trend on it, and as I said before, the UAE was ahead of the game by bringing people back during 2021, but the global outlook is still going to be a bit bleak for the next couple of years.
Shaun Mendes, the aviation expert, speaking to us this morning, live from Malawi on the first day of ATM.
You've been listening to a Dubai Eye 103.8 podcast. To enjoy lots more from Dubai Eye in the United Arab Emirates, just go to DubaiEye1038.com or find them wherever you normally get your podcasts.